Chapter 4. Why we repeat the same patterns. I once met a woman at a small gathering who told me something that stayed with me for a long time. She said, almost laughing at herself, "I don't understand my life. I keep choosing the same kind of man, even when I promise myself I won't." Then she paused, as if realizing she had just spoken a truth she had avoided for years. "I leave one relationship," she continued, "and somehow I walk straight into another version of the same story, different face, same ending." She wasn't asking for advice. She had already read the books, listened to the podcasts, spoken to her friends. She had even written lists what she wanted, what she would no longer accept, and yet life kept repeating itself. Later that evening, I thought about something Carl Jung once said, quote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." End quote. At the time, I used to think that sounded almost too poetic to be practical, but the older I become, the more I see how quietly true it is. Because most competition in life does not come from ignorance. It comes from familiarity, and familiarity is stronger than wisdom. There is a strange comfort in what we already know, even when we know hurts us. A child who grows up in a noisy home learns how to read tension in the air. They become skilled at sensing moods, adjusting behavior, staying alert. That skill becomes part of survival. Later in life, when everything is calm, they might feel uneasy without realizing why. Peace feels unfamiliar. Silence feels suspicious. Love that is steady can feel boring. And so, without any conscious decision, the nervous system begins to reach for what feels recognizable, not what is best, not what is known. This is where patterns begin. Years ago, I knew a woman who built a successful business. From the outside, her life looked stable, good income, respected name, comfortable home, but she told me something quietly over coffee one morning. "I always find a way to lose peace," she said. "What do you mean?" I asked. She smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. "Every time things get too calm, I start creating problems. I pick arguments. I take unnecessary risks. I find something to worry about. It's like I don't trust peace." At first, she thought it was bad luck. Then she thought it was stress. Then she thought it was the world. But slowly she began to notice something uncomfortable. Peace itself felt unfamiliar, and unfamiliar felt unsafe. That realization changed how she saw her own life. Viktor Frank once observed that between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies our freedom. But what many people don't realize is that most of us don't actually live in that space. We live before it. We react before we reflect. We choose before we see. We repeat before we understand. And so life becomes a loop. Not because we are trapped by destiny, but because we are guided by invisible memory. Memory is not only something we think about. Memory lives in the body. It lives in tone of voice, in posture, in the way we apologize too quickly or not at all, in the way we stay silent when we should speak, in the way we over-explain when no explanation is needed. We think we are making fresh choices every day, but often we are reenacting old emotional scripts written long before we were aware of them. This is what Carl Jung meant when he spoke about unconscious. He did not describe it as something distant or mystical. He saw it in everyday behavior, especially in the pattern people insisted they could not understand. I once reflected my own early life growing up in Vietnam. There were things we did not question. We adapted quickly to what life demanded. We learned to read danger, to be careful with words, to survive uncertainty. At the time, it did not feel like psychology. I felt like life. But years later, I noticed something subtle. Even when the environment changed completely, new country, new language, new opportunities, the inner reflexes sometimes remain. Not in obvious ways, but in quieter ones. A tendency to expect difficulty before ease. A habit of preparing for loss even in moments of gain. A quiet voice that says, do not relax too much. That voice does not belong to the present. It belongs to the memory. And memory is powerful enough to travel across oceans. The brain, as modern neuroscience now confirms, is not designed primarily to seek happiness. It is designed to seek familiarity. Familiar patterns require less energy. They feel predictable. Even pain can become familiar, and what is familiar begins to feel safe even if it's not good for us. And why people return to relationships they know will hurt them. Why they repeat financial mistakes when they have already suffered from. Why they avoid opportunities that require a new version of themselves. The unconscious mind does not ask, is it good for me? It asks, have you survived this before? If the answer is yes, it accepts repetition as safety. This is where Alfred Adler offers another insight. He believed that human beings are not only shaped by past experiences, but also by private logic, inner beliefs formed in childhood that continue to guide adult behavior. A child who grows up feeling not enough may become an adult who overcompensates by achieving endlessly or underestimates themselves constantly. Both paths look different, but the root feeling is the same. And until that root is seen, the pattern continues. One of the most difficult truths to accept is this. We do not repeat our past because we enjoy it. We repeat it because the part of us believe it is normal. Even suffering can become a kind of home, and leaving what is familiar can feel like leaving ourselves behind. That is why change often feels like grief. Not just a loss of situation, but loss of identity. I remember a conversation with a younger man who wanted to change his life completely. I want a new beginning, he said. But when things started to actually change, new routines, new friendships, new habits, he felt anxious. I don't feel like myself anymore, he admitted. And I understood what he meant, because transformation is not only addiction, it is subtraction. we lose a version of ourselves that survived the past, even when that version is no longer needed. James Clear writes about habits as repeated votes for a type of person we believe we are becoming. But beneath habits is something deeper still, emotional safety. We do not only choose what we want, we choose what feels emotionally survivable. That is why awareness is so important, because without awareness we confuse familiarity with truth. We think that is just who I am, but often it is who we learn to be. So how do patterns finally change? Not by force, not by punishment, not by shame. Patterns begin to loosen it in a very simple but comfortable moment when we notice them, not judge them, not run from them, just notice. We have been there, we have been here before, we have made this choice before. This feeling is familiar, but that moment, something very small, very powerful opens a space. And in that space, repetition is no longer automatic. It becomes visible. And what becomes visible can finally begin to change. Perhaps that is why life repeats itself so patiently, not to punish us, but to make us aware, because the unconscious will continue to write the same story until the conscious mind finally learns to read it. That is amazing, isn't it? I hope you understand it, and please click like and subscribe to my channel.